for those of you who don't know me, my name is Zach. I'm there are two Zachs on the call, so I'm Zach Johnson. And I'm the developer relations lead for Bristlemouth. And so if we have the opportunity to meet, it's good to see you again. We got a pretty quick set of updates for you guys today, and then we'll leave a lot of time for Q&A. And again, just to kind of set the stage here, these are our monthly updates where we invite guests from the Bristlemouth community and some of the core developers to come give updates about what's going on. And then we also are kind of using this as a way to open forum for common questions or specific questions about your project. And this is our second one. So feedback on the format and content is very, very welcome. So if you have suggestions to make this better, this is really intended to serve the folks that are here. So if you've shown up to these and you're like, hey, I would really like to hear about XYZ, just let us know ahead of time. Or if you have something you want to present, let us know. I will kick it off with just a quick thank you to everyone who made BristleCon back in November happen and who were also able to join. What a treat that was. Probably some of the most fun I've had in a very long time. And I really enjoyed seeing all the enthusiasm and hearing about a lot of the projects that are happening. And I watched the recordings again recently, and there's just really some great talks, even if I wasn't able to attend all of them. To that, and the recordings are available online on the forum post. You can find the link to them, and let me know if you have trouble finding them. I think we recorded most of the sessions, and you'll be able to see them there. Watch them at your leisure. One thing you may have missed if you haven't been able to see the recordings or weren't there is we launched an accelerator for the Pioneer program. The details of this, there are a lot of details and a lot of things to get into about that, but so I'll just kind of point you to bristlemouth.org, and you can go to the accelerator tab and see more information there. But this is going to be a year-long program, maybe a little bit more, and we're really looking forward to getting the pioneers more access to more resources, whether that's mentorship, knowledge base, capital, that kind of thing. So this is our attempt to really kind of get a critical mass of users and commercialize certain aspects of some of the projects that are out there on Bristlemouth. So really excited about that. So please go check that out. There's another kind of major piece of documentation that was released in the last couple of weeks. We're kind of calling it Guide 6, right? So if you've been through the developer kit onboarding guides, we have guides 1 through 5, which take you all the way from unboxing all the way to doing a sample integration with the onboard sensors on the development kit board. Guide 6, or what we're referring to as Guide 6, is really an RS-232 example integration. So we go through all of the steps from kind of like looking at the sensor device, connecting it, enabling your RS-232 on the dev kit, et cetera, et cetera. So that's launched and available in the same page as their other docs. I highly recommend you check it out. More to come there. And this is a media one, right? So if you've got an off-the-shelf sensor that's got a serial connection, you can use a lot of the same code and the same process to get data right away. And so the reason it's kind of important for us is you can immediately start getting value well out of the system if you have a serial payload. So that's a really cool milestone. The rest of today, we're going to kind of split it into two before we get into the Q&A. One, I'll turn it over to, in just a second, to Zachary Crockett, who will be telling us about some of the core development that's gone on in the last 2 months. And then we've got a special guest here, Eric Stackpole, who some of you may have met, who's so kind to zoom in all the way from Dubai after a full day of meeting and greeting to tell us a little bit about some of his integration journeys and to kind of maybe ask the community for a little help, because he's got a really cool project that's going to get really big really fast, and we kind of want to see if some of you guys can help us out with that. So yeah, when we get to the Q&A, if you think of something you want to ask before then, just type it into the chat window when we get there. Feel free to either use your raise your hand, unmute and talk, or whatever the Zoom will let you do, or type it into the window, and then we'll kind of call on you from there. The recording of this will be available as well, and I'll post that into the same forum post as the announcement. Thanks for showing up here. It's really great to have everybody. I'll turn it over to Zach Crockett for an update on the core development.
Sure, sure. Oh, what a great time for a spam call. Decline. Okay. Um, right when I unmute. Hello, everyone. My name is Zachary Crockett. I lead the firmware team at SoFar Ocean, and I spend a lot of my time thinking about Bristlemouth firmware development. So, in the last month, since we had the last one of these sessions, there have been, if you follow the GitHub Bristlemouth BM protocol paid repo and look at the releases that have happened there, we've released a bunch of times. 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, and today I might release 0.9, maybe tomorrow. But and that's because SoFar is releasing our first product built on Bristlemouth that we intend to sell. And this is just to get meta for a second. This is why we really want more and more people and companies, researchers making things on Bristlemouth, stress testing the system and finding all the things that we can make better. Because when you're going to put your name behind a product that you put out into the world and you want people to buy, things like reliability really matter. And as we have been stress testing the current meter as we approach the shipping date for that, we've found a bunch of just little edge cases and memory bugs, a handful of memory corruption bugs that all would be, you don't notice them when you just like start it up and like run the thing and say like, okay, look, it works. But if you let them sit for a long time and then you go and analyze the data later, you're like, that looks weird. Why is that? So um, all of these, if you look at that releases page, you'll see it's like 0.6, huge strides for the current meter, 0.7, current meter reliability, 0.8, reporting current meter tilt, like, and today 0.9 has a few more bug fixes, and this is probably going to be the release that we actually put on the systems that we send to customers. So it's been all about reliability, fixing in particular a handful of memory bugs, and just making the current meter app itself, which is in the repo and completely open source if you want to follow it. It's more complicated than some of the other example apps, but it can show you some good best practices. So with that, I think I'll say that's what's been happening in firmware land for the past month, and I'll turn it over to Eric.
Cool. Thank you very much, Zach and Zach. Yeah, it's definitely been an exciting time seeing the integration capabilities with Bristlemouth. For any of you who don't know, my background is not in software. I'm a mechanical engineer, and in fact, I'm a pretty lousy software developer. So I've been kind of learning as I go how to do that part of everything. But we started talking some time ago about this crazy idea of integrating the company used to be called Vemco, and now it's Innovacy, RX Live acoustic tag receiver into the smart mooring system using Bristlemouth. What these receivers are is basically it's this tube that has an acoustic receiver in it, and a lot of animals, like it's often sharks, some large fish, seals. Scientists will put these little acoustic tags in the animal subdermally. So usually like they'll catch the animal and then surgically implant this thing into their body so they don't even notice it once it's kind of healed over. And it sends out an acoustic signal that basically is just like a serial number. And when one of these animals, let's call it the shark, swims past a receiver, the receiver logs that animal has passed by. And so large arrays of these receivers are spread out really throughout the world. There are a bunch on the east coast of the United States, for example, that are tracking white sharks. And so as sharks migrate up and down the coast, we can see where they're going, when they're going there, how long they're staying. But there's a problem, and that's that most of these receivers right now are just data loggers. They have a little SD card in them, and to get data, literally periodically a researcher will have to go to where the field site is, don a mask and snorkel or pull up a rope, retrieve the receiver, bring it back to the lab, open it up, and physically upload the SD card to get the data into the cloud where scientists can use it. So what we're trying to do is take this RX Live, which has an ability to send data real time, and integrate that with Bristlemouth so it can go up a smart mooring cable to a spotter, and then in real time tell us what pings are happening. You can imagine the implications of that if we're able to send data from this system real time. It allows us to have a much more scalable, much more easy to tend to network of these receivers. So that's involved integrating RS-485. That's the language that that's the protocol that the receivers use. And we're basically figuring out how to write serial data back and forth to communicate with this system. I've been learning a lot as I go, and we're realizing there's a lot more we want to integrate that requires some software savvy. So a little bit, about what I'm doing, that specific project, just there. If you want to learn more about it, you can go to the Bristlemouth forums. We've also just posted, like on SoFar's LinkedIn, a link to that. But if you look up RX Live integration on the forums, it's a recent post. You can follow it there. I would love to get help with this sort of a thing. If you are a software developer and you are familiar with Bristlemouth, how to integrate Bristlemouth things, there are a bunch of other projects I've got up my sleeve that I'd love to do, but I need some software help. And then also, if you are doing similar projects to this, if you have an interest in acoustic receivers or things like that, would definitely love to hear from you. This is a time when we're all kind of starting to integrate this sort of equipment, and it's great to just share each other's knowledge. So that is what I am doing. Trying to track sharks and other animals like that with spotter buoys. I guess from here, this might be a good time just to open it up. Zach Johnson, I know what you think to Q&A perhaps.
Yeah, definitely. So we've got more than 50 minutes here, so plenty of time for questions. I've got a few of my own kind of that I can ask as well that just came up while Eric was talking. But Rebecca, do you think you can switch us over to receive questions from all the attendees?
Yep.
Definitely, these are the sessions I'm most excited about because we're building Bristlemouth so that everyone can use it, and I definitely would like to hear what people are thinking about the most right now.
All right. So I think I see already a question from Vince Smith. Good to see you again as well. Again, I don't know if anyone's checked out Blue Endeavors, but please go check them out. They're up to some really good work.
Hey, Vince.
Thanks, guys. Hey, Eric. So what you were just talking about with the acoustic tags, we've been thinking about, our project is really working on low-cost sensors on Bristlemouth. And one thing we had been blocked on was the satellite tags for marine megafauna, not the acoustic ones, are about $5 to $6 grand a piece. And like in Cocos and some of these other places, we've been trying to put satellite tags in. And we were wondering if there's a way, because it has a lot more information, and every time these satellite tags hit the surface, they ping the satellite. Is there a way to use the spotter buoys, like the one we put in Cocos, to actually receive from a new type of tag, that instead of trying all the expenses trying to go up to the satellite, to just ping Bristlemouth when that animal surfaces?
So to say that back to you, you're saying like, satellite transceivers are very expensive, and kind of sophisticated. If you wanted to make it a really low cost system, the animal could just get close to this spotter buoy, and then a greater amount of actual telemetry data could be sent locally without having to go up to space and back.
Correct. Yeah. Just try to lower the cost of the satellite tags by taking out all the functionality of going to a satellite, because now we have the smart buoys that it could send that data to, instead of trying to do it all itself.
Man, the literal project that we're doing comes to mind. I don't know how much we have to say about that now, but it seems to me very possible. Obviously range is limited, so you really have to, I think this would work in situations where, you pretty much know the area that these animals are going to be coming to the surface quite a bit. I've definitely done a bunch of research on like cetacean tags. There's like pop-up tags also that will like be attached to an animal for a while, and then they'll come up to the surface and then kind of float around. So it seems possible, I guess. Really, thinking about this from a technological standpoint, what we're talking about is then like a surface expression of Bristlemouth, basically a radio receiver, or we could call it a transceiver, that would go on the top of the buoy, or whatever device you have that would be on the surface with an antenna array. Is that kind of what you're talking about? Basically a Bristlemouth-enabled radio?
Yeah, just a way to get the Bristlemouth spotter buoy to talk to the individual sensors. Yeah, it would be something like that. We haven't. It was kind of on our list of the sensors we could really see value in bringing to the world for much lower cost.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, and Zach Johnson, I see you're.
I do want to
have-
jump in.
Yeah.
I know one of the pioneers, Sohan Sunku at UW, is working with a good friend of mine, Paul Clerkin, who does open ocean shark research, and they've developed their own satellite tag just because they were too expensive. So I'd recommend reaching out to him on the forums, or I can connect you guys over email. I don't know if this will be something that's incorporated into the spotter buoy or the smart mooring. Like Eric said, the limitations there, you just have to swim close to a spotter buoy in order to use that. And Eric's Vemco integration will essentially do that for these specific tags, but the same idea could be used for other tags. But I'd reach out to Sohan, because a lot of the work they do is these kind of migratory pelagic species, and megamouths in particular are their area of interest. But that could be a cool little side project, or perhaps they could share the plans with you guys, and you can produce them together.
The other thing that's interesting to me too is just that this is not Bristlemouth necessarily, but satellite transceivers, I think, are going to become lower cost and smaller over time. We've seen announcements from like SpaceX saying that they're going to have direct to cellular capability within the next several years. So you could potentially just have essentially a cell phone transceiver that doesn't need any special antennas or anything. Maybe in the coming years that will become more accessible. I don't know if that maybe just solves the problem and you go around needing the Bristlemouth module for that, but it's a cool idea. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. Any other questions while we're at it?
Yeah, we have 2 questions in the chat. So from Julian Blanco, they're asking any updates on when Bristlemouth bulkheads will be available for sale for integration to other pressure vessels?
That's a really good question. Yeah, we don't have a concrete answer for you yet, Julian, on that. But that's a really critical part of making the hardware available. I would say keep an eye on the forum, or I'll email you directly, but we maybe have something to talk about in a couple of months when you have a little more line of sight on when that's available. In the short term, if you've got something that you need to do and you want just some hardware, hit me up on the forum, and I'll see if I can go. We've got a stash that we can kind of send out in to you and to anyone who needs them as kind of a stopgap until we get this hardware pipeline set up.
Much appreciated.
I'm just curious, are you gonna tell us what you're thinking about putting in the tube while I got you on the spot?
Sure. So we're working on just a 8-channel acoustic array to do some beamforming on. And rather than like going to the 3-inch, tube that we have right now with the moat in it, and then jumpering it with another, we're probably just gonna use a blue trail connector for now. Between that and our pressure vessel, it would just be nice to put everything into one larger pressure vessel instead of having 2 connected.
Exactly. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, the bulkhead connectors are really low cost to manufacture. There's some minor secret sauce into getting them to stick right, but the idea is that we want to try to make it so that you don't need any special equipment or training to do that. Not quite there yet, but I think we can get you, just with a quick video call, get you set up so you can populate that and give you the through-hole specs and all that.
I'm curious also, when we're talking about penetrators, are you talking about on the dev kit, we have this kind of bulkhead module that's threaded, just like how kind of like a subcon bulkhead would work or something like that? Are you interested in using that as a connector, or just using the raw Bristlemouth sockets and attaching those directly to your end cap?
Good question. Either, I think. I think we'd be open to either. So even we can make new end caps that we can thread into, or try to make something that, we can just put the two little dots on there and have that go straight in, which would be pretty cool too.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you guys have plenty of room, but one of the things I'm very excited about for the future is, the raw Bristlemouth sockets are extremely low profile. It's basically a little sticker, and you drill a hole and you put that in, and we're, like Zach said, we're still kind of perfecting that design and getting all the details going. But I'm really looking forward to the day when, like, literally, making a high pressure penetrator involves just drilling these two holes, attaching these things, and it takes up hardly any space. So anyway, yeah, that'll be a fun period.
Another question on that is, like, on making the cables, I envision eventually you guys are going to have recommendations for, like, who to source the cables and from. So, like, if we wanted to, like, on the top of the catenary of the mooring, like, go up to another surface expression with, a 10-foot run or 20-foot run that's not the thick yellow cable. Is that, guys, in your roadmap as well?
Yeah, so we right now we've got the jumpers, the little single post jumpers, black and white, to go short distances. And then we've got the yellow cables to go. I think the smallest one is 5 meters. It is strongly suspected, and I think you're confirming our suspicion, that there's something in between those two that might be necessary. I don't know if SOFAR is going to produce those. That might not be something that's needed on the smart mooring, but at some point, I think we're going to try to explore what that might look like. We've had some preliminary conversations with cable manufacturers. Part of the challenge, though, is that the Bristlemouth approach is to try to make cheap cables, or cheap is the wrong word, low cost cables. And cable manufacturers want to keep the costs high, for a myriad of reasons: testing, reliability, some good reasons and some not so good reasons. So we'll see how that all shakes out. But to answer your question, yes, super interested in doing that. I think for the short term, we probably have these two types that are available. And then as we kind of expand into other applications beyond the smart mooring and into other platforms, then we'll definitely need this kind of intermediary, meters of distance. And also we've had a lot of requests for the same thing, but on the seafloor, like a very hardened cable for that too. So that's another thing that's like, wow, wouldn't it be great, right? In the very, very short term, the way to solve that is the smart mooring nodes, where you connect the two yellow cables, is a perfect place for a breakout. And if you needed another surface expression, we could share the design of that coupler with you, and you could use the mechanical fastening of that coupler in a larger format to kind of extend. We call it like the science cage. You have two yellow cables on either side, but there's nothing to say that they have to be very close together. Or at 180 degrees from each other, right? It could be at 90 degrees or something like that. So there's some options there, and maybe when we're talking about some of the other things we were going to talk about earlier, we can, like the penetrators and cores, we can pull the mechanical engineers from SOFAR to see if they have any bits and bobs here at the office that might be able to help you out until we can kind of get a dedicated Bristlemouth hardware pipeline set up. But yeah, noted. Great point. That's suspicion I've had for a while. I did say, Rebecca, you did have somebody else on the line, so I wanted to make sure to get to that. But Julian, real quick, did you have anything else to add before we switch over?
I can wait till the other person's done. Make sure we have time.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. And let's connect. And then if it's universally useful, we'll throw that conversation up on the forum. Yeah, please, Rebecca, if you can let us know.
Great. So Andre actually has 2 comments. One question, one comment. One is, Eric, we're embarking on a very similar endeavor using Vemco receivers early next year, waiting for the bureaucrats to catch up. We should link in the new year. Much appreciated. And then the next one is, any ideas about linking with other subsurface sensors in like a 50-meter radius apart from acoustics? Goal is to get high resolution IMU data from a network of sensors to a central spotter node.
Yeah, so I think the question was, are there other ways to use acoustics to connect sensors to a Bristlemouth network? Absolutely. I think actually 2 of the pioneers that we've approved are working on projects specifically on acoustic modems or underwater data transmission, device to device. Super interesting field. There's a lot of applications for that. In terms of distributed sensors or using a single surface expression to collect data from an array that doesn't have a surface expression, or for just staying completely subsurface until the need to connect over a different telemetry protocol is needed. Yeah, it's great. I think I don't have those folks on the top of my head, but I think if you wanted to get on the forum, and it sounds maybe a bit repetitive there, but just say, hey, is anybody working on device to device communications? I will send them over to that post, and then we can get a conversation going. That's a really cool thing. Andre, please let me know if I misunderstood the question though, or didn't quite answer it.
He also says, I'm looking at it too, it has other ideas besides acoustics under
Oh, interesting.
within like a 50-meter radius subsurface.
Yeah,
besides acoustics.
besides, so like cabled solutions is the only really thing I can think of.
I mean, Bristlemouth can talk over that distance, and because it's just 2 wires, it's probably one of the lowest cost ways to do that. It kind of dovetails off of the last conversation we were having in response to Julian. Is there something that's not a whole beefy smart mooring cable? Well, when sockets become available, first of all, even if it's not a product, there's nothing stopping someone from making their own. You could literally just like pot a small box that has 2 sockets on one side and wire whatever type of wire you want to use coming out the other. So I could see making, a much lower profile harness basically that is allowing Bristlemouth to talk over that distance.
Yeah, and then the kind of the operational thing, I think that's what you're mentioning here, is that the line is moving and the mooring is rotating. That's a really big challenge. We always see especially in field conditions, there's orbiting and things like that. So you have to put something to resolve that rotational element.
We're working on that this week, actually.
So yeah, there's options there that we might so far as maybe exploring.
We've talked about how cool it would be to have a Bristlemouth slip ring, basically a waterproof slip ring that allows, physical rotation, but Bristlemouth columns to go through.
Yeah,
I think I did some prototypes a while ago. I mean, again, we don't want it to all come from us. We'll probably do it if it gets to that point, but we'd also love someone to beat us to it.
And then I see, so yeah, thanks for those questions, Andre. Really interesting stuff there. A question from Ron. Using Raspberry Pi or Arduino to control a device like an ROV on Bristlemouth. Okay, this is one of my favorite questions ever, not just because I'm an ROV guy, but specifically one thing to really kind of expand where Bristlemouth can be useful would be to allow us to tap into the existing knowledge base and talent, and also name recognition from chipsets like the Arduino or Raspberry Pi. To do that, we would need a small little bridge between that and Bristlemouth, and we're developing that, I think, making a lot more headway than I thought we would at this point. But there's a Bristlemouth serial or BM serial that will allow you to kind of call this library into action and send and receive messages to any chipset, but specifically those 2 would be really clever. So yes, 100%. And I think that opens it up to, I don't want to say folks like Eric because it sounds somewhat pejorative, but if Eric's like, hey, I'm a mechanical engineer, I don't want to program directly, on
I want to drag and drop an Arduino file that I found on the internet and see if it works.
And plus there's so many sensors and devices and libraries already made for Arduino. It's like, just to be able to take advantage of those would be excellent. I think that's a really elegant solution because that prevents us from having to deal with any kind of hardware changes because we've got very similar chip on our modes, but there's hardware differences, and that could really be a big driver and kind of in the weeds kind of effort for folks to overcome. But if you're just like, man, I've got the Arduino Mini, it works great, I've been using it for years, or somebody else has, and I want to, kind of build on what they're doing. That will allow us to move very quickly. Again, I don't have quite a timeline on the release of that, but I just recently saw that at BristleCon, Charles Cross, one of the engineers, brought a device that he'd been kind of secretly working in his bat cave for a while, and it looked pretty far along. So maybe that's something we can discuss in the kind of the January.
That was an Ethernet bridge, basically, or Ethernet moat that would allow, so for like a Raspberry Pi or any big computer, that's probably the language that would speak.
Cool. So great question from around there. Oh, go ahead, Erica. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, and also I didn't know, Zachary Crockett, if you have ideas on VM serial progress or any other thoughts in addition to what Zach said.
You know, it's so if you go to GitHub and you look in the Bristlemouth organization, one of the repos is BM serial. And that's what we're talking about. You can use that repo, the structure of it, to send messages back and forth between the Bristlemouth network and something outside the Bristlemouth network. That is what we use to talk between the Bristlemouth bridge and the spotter. So we use that, and we are evolving it every day. It's very much a part of all the firmware development that we do. So if you want to get started there, until we have like an easy, like, here's how you do it guide, looking at BM serial and looking at how the bridge interacts, the bridge app in the BM protocol repo interacts with BM serial would be a good place to start. It is certainly possible, but we haven't yet, written the guide to make it super easy.
We would definitely love super users to like jump on that and start getting familiar with it early.
That's kind of time here, but also a good way to kind of close the session today is that there are a lot of things that are built but not yet announced in a guide, just because the sophistication, maturity, and documentation part of it takes a lot of effort to kind of package. And so if you are feeling bold and kind of excited to get started on some of these things, please head over to GitHub, interface directly with Zachary Crockett and the rest of the firmware team there. The forum is also a great place to do that as well. But you don't necessarily have to wait for us to say like, oh yeah, BM serial is ready, here you go, and here's the guide. A lot of that stuff, if you've got a little bit of experience or you just want to get your feet wet in that, please go ahead and just join in the chaos. But I think that's everything for today that we have time for. We'll be announcing the schedule for January's update shortly, but I think we're still aiming for the first Wednesdays. But please let us know if you had any questions we didn't get to, and the recording of this will be available on the forum post. Again, thank everybody. Thank you, Eric and Zachary, for your time today. Thank you, Rebecca, for putting this together, and thank you all for your time and enthusiasm today. And hopefully we'll see you again very shortly.
Thank you.